are now listening to SparkFM.
This is a message from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Travel increases your chance of getting and spreading COVID-19. Take steps to protect yourself and others. Wear a mask that completely covers your nose and mouth. Masks are required on planes, buses, trains, and other forms of public transportation traveling into, within, or outside of the U.S. and in U.S. transportation hubs, such as airports and stations. Stay at least 6 feet away from others. Wash your hands often, and watch for symptoms of COVID-19. When traveling back to the U.S., you must show a negative COVID-19 test result or have documentation of recovery from COVID-19 before boarding your flight back to the U.S. Visit cdc.gov/COVID-19 travel to learn more about travel requirements and recommendations.
Finally Home is a must-read step-by-step guide that will equip any first-time home buyer with the knowledge they need to confidently make informed decisions. This book provides answers in simple and clear terms to most, if not all, of the questions you may have about credit, home ownership, and generational wealth. Finally Home equips the reader with the confidence to be engaged with the home buying process without feeling vulnerable or exploited. TaylaMade Real Estate Easy is not just a catchy hashtag, it is real estate agent and radio personality TaylaAndre's goal. A goal to simplify one of the most challenging processes you will go through as an adult. A goal to educate you properly on credit and teach you the strategies to finding the home of your dreams. It is not just a good book or an easy read, it is the secret to a seamless home buying experience.
Why would you joke like this?
Kyle's not here. Got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah, zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Harsh.
Hey, he knew not to drink. We made that clear to all of our kids, right?
No, not really.
No, if we don't tell them what we expect and why they shouldn't drink, how are they going to know?
Tom, they hear you. For more information, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Call SparkFM at 617-272-3387.
Good rising, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. I am TaylaAndre. Waking up with TaylaAndre has absolutely nothing to do with the time of day. We link up at about waking up your third eye with unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. I know today is typically Freaky Friday, but today we have someone who is near and dear to my heart. She don't know me, but I know her ever since I was a little itty bitty girl sitting in the chair 5 a.m. getting my hair pressed on the way to school. And so you have seen her throughout the years. She is a staple in our community from the past into the present. And what I would like to do in order to introduce her is to play a clip that I think is timeless, needed, and necessary for where we are in society today. And so without any further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and play the clip, and then we will bring to you Pastor Liz Walker.
I am Reverend Liz Walker from Roxbury Presbyterian Church, and I welcome you as we gather in community to help heal our beloved city and this violence-weary world. Let us pray. Creator God, in the beginning, you said, "Let there be light." And the light shone, piercing the darkness. Help us find our way through the darkness now. You taught us that we belong to each other. Help us hold each other now. We pray comfort for those who have lost loved ones, courage for those who are struggling through the trauma of physical and psychic pain, and tenderness to those for whom the world no longer makes sense. Lord, bless this broken-hearted city as she finds her balance, dusts herself off, and tilts her head back toward the sky. Open our eyes to your presence this morning. Open our hearts to your grace. Restore us so that we can see and be the light once again. In all that we hold holy, for me that is Jesus Christ. Let the people of God together say, Amen.
Amen, Ashe. I love the way she said, for me, that is Jesus Christ, without judging anyone else in their beliefs. I present to you, again, let me remind you, this is the first memory I have of a Black woman who was a real person, not a character, not a fictional, but a real person who was tangible to me in my eyes. Was Liz Walker. My mentor, Julia Mahia, speaks about her often, and we have very similar views on how Liz has impacted our life and helped us decide what it is we wanted to do in our futures. And so thank you, Liz. Pastor Liz, you are her story, you are living history, and I am honored today to be in community with you. Thank you.
Tayla, I am to be with you. You really inspire me because look at you communicating and reaching people in such a powerful and positive way. So thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Julia is my girl. So whatever you guys want, I'm going to try with you. I'm glad to be here.
And we are glad to have you. And so I want those who do not know, you must have been living under a rock or you're a transplant and just came to Boston. Liz Walker was on Channel 4. She is like the long list of things that she was able to accomplish and the things that she has done is what we will go through during this interview. And so I want to start all the way in the beginning, like the Bible says, to your transfer to Boston as a Black woman sitting in a position like, I'd like to take a moment because one of the things that I do here on the show is I am livid that we have one or two Black reporters today here in the city of Boston that are in the public eye and in the public view. And it wasn't until the last 6 months that we had a billboard that even featured a Black woman, let alone a Black woman in the front and center of the billboard. And so for you to be sitting in that desk front and center over 30 years ago, Liz, was like, that feat and that accomplishment, how?
Well, that's a big question. I came to Boston from San Francisco. I had been a television news reporter for, I think, about 6 years before I got to Boston, 6 or 7 years. I had worked in my home state of Arkansas. I worked in Denver, Colorado, and I came to San Francisco and came to Boston after that. So I had credentials, but I didn't realize that Boston was a city that was reeling as it was from busing.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
you just kind of think you know a city, but I hadn't done my homework. I got a job. Decided I'd find out about it when I got here. And little did I know the climate was so tense and so horrible. They put me in the anchor desk, first on the weekend, and then they moved me up to the weekday. And so for me, it was just the next step. I hadn't thought that it was such a monumental step in the city of Boston. But for Boston, it was game-changing. And there were articles in the newspaper and commentators saying, will she survive? Can she make it? What are you talking about? I have paid my dues, I'm a professional. So it was only after the fact that I realized the impact of being the first African-American woman to anchor a major news show.
Mm-hmm.
It was only after that I realized the impact of it. And but it seemed like a natural step to me. Boston's a tough city, and it's a tough city without the racial element to it. And it's certainly a tough city when you think about the disparities that go across race and culture. So my presence was big and it was new. Again, I was the first person who was surprised that there was such a response. But I have to tell you that despite all of the roughness of the city and the closed elements of the city, I actually fell in love with Boston. As tough as it is, and I've been here ever since. And you've got rough problems, you've got harsh problems, but I got to tell you, when you compare this city to some of the other cities right now, it's not as bad.
So I would like to do a charrette type of situation where I'd like to go through the different errors in which you reported and different sectors of life and how it differs and how it's the same. Like, for instance, when you first got here in the 80s and busing was taking place, what did that look like as a journalist? What did that look like as a reporter? And what did it look like as a Black woman?
There were neighborhoods that as a reporter, there were neighborhoods I couldn't cover, the news. I remember distinctly, can you still hear me? Because
Yes.
I keep getting a message that my mic is muted.
I'm muted because Janet said it was echoing, and so I can hear you perfectly fine.
Oh, her mic was muted. I thought that was my mic. I just didn't know. Okay, I was, as a reporter, there were neighborhoods that we couldn't cover stories in. They wouldn't let us go because they feared for our safety. This was the first city in the country where I worked where I couldn't go on a story. And I remember that was very upsetting. So that was really rough. There were tensions in the city. I came in 1980. Busing was 75. I was shocked that the tensions had, lasted as long as they had. But now we realize that trauma can last forever. There's still tension based on the bus. People were, so as a Black woman, now I have to say, remember, I'm a reporter. So I lived quite in a different life. I didn't live in Roxbury. I wasn't, connected in the community in that way. I lived out in the suburbs somewhere. So that part of it, I don't know if I felt as much as I felt since then. But in covering stories, that was the way I felt it, that I knew there were issues. In retrospect, I don't think we did a very good job back then, despite my presence, in covering the neighborhood, in covering all of the community. I think television news is really one of those tough spots in equity and fairness. As you have said, there are not that many people of color on television and in the media. So that's why I love the fact that we have the good part of social media, the good part of the technology is you can have more voices and more faces that are more representative of this wonderful country where we have all kinds of people. But television news is not necessarily the best place for that. So it was, I felt it, is what I guess the short answer is, Tayla.
Mm-hmm. And so I want to say Northeastern did an amazing job documenting your history. And of course, as a reporter, I had to do my own due diligence. And they discussed how back in the 80s, you got pregnant. And it was just like, oh my gosh, this is so bad for the image of the station. How dare she? And, you being unemployed was a fear for simply engaging in motherhood. Northeastern, in the interviews that they cited, you stated that, have you seen my son? I wouldn't change a thing. Was there conversations that were had on the back end? Because you did no interviews, like the whole world nationally wanted to speak with you and you didn't speak on it. What was the primary, I believe I know the reason, but what was the primary reason you decided that this is not something I'm going to speak on? This is a personal matter, and unless it has to do with the news, I'm not talking about it.
You answered that perfectly. That's exactly my pregnancy was not, I'm trying to get a call along. My pregnancy was not public product for me, but what I didn't realize, I'm so naive, Tayla. I didn't realize it was going to be a national story. What I thought when I found that I was pregnant, I was 36 years old, and I decided this was not going to be anything other than my going through. There was no decision to make. I was pregnant, I would have a child, and I would do that. That was the priority. If I lost the job, so be it, whatever, I'd get through it. I wasn't worried about that. So this was like a real turning point for me in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I had decided that the TV station would probably fire me. Again, I was surprised. They said, no, you're our girl, we're gonna stay with you. And now looking back, I realized that they got more publicity that way than they would have gotten if they had, let me go. And so at the time though, they kept me and I just decided to move on with my life. I think that for me, it was deciding what was most important in my life. And I think that as women, we have to decide, we control our body. The government doesn't control my body, I control my body. And so that was my decision, whether you liked it or not. Most of the community was writing letters and making calls, and most people were very respectful of my decision. But of course it was a political issue. Of course it was going to gather a lot of attention in the world. I got calls from 60 Minutes. I got calls from Oprah. I got calls from all of these because this had never been done. But that was not the reason I was in the position. I didn't get pregnant so I could be on Oprah. For Lord's sake, that wasn't it. And, for me, it's a matter of going on with my life. The harder part was being on TV and going on with my life. But I did. And again, my son is fabulous. And, we've talked about this many years, many times, and I am blessed to have it. But at that moment, it was a turning point. Whose life are you going to live? You're going to live the life that the people in the world, want you to live, or you're going to live the life that you are going to live? And I made the decision, and I tell young people, and I tell everybody, you have to make your own decisions, and you have to live for yourself. Live for God and for yourself, and you'll be all right.
So today in 2021, soon to be 2022, it's difficult for women to make decisions about our own bodies. And the government is trying to dictate what those decisions are. Who was your rock? Who was your support? Who were you able to lean on during a time where literally the whole world had a spotlight on you?
This was, people ask me, how did I become a minister? And again, another one of those things I'm going to have to think a lot more about, Tayla. But when I was in this situation at Channel 4 and I was pregnant, among the calls was a group of women from Concord Baptist Church. I had never been to Concord Baptist Church. I did not know these women, but one of them in particular, her name was Josephine Thompson. I'll never forget her. And she called and said she wanted to wrap. Now remember, you don't remember this, but when I was pregnant, those who were opposed to my remaining in a public position included Black ministers from Boston. Many of them were up in arms, saying that I was a really horrible role model. So that was part of this media frenzy. I didn't know them, but they had done some radio show and I was the subject, so they got a lot of press. This woman called and said, I've been seeing how people are just, kind of hanging you out to dry, and we'd like to invite you to our church. And so this lovely woman, Josephine Thompson, and her, I think it was a missionary group, I don't know, but a group of women, Concord Baptist Church, just pulled me in and literally held on. I had friends who were very, very close. Few lived in the Boston area, but I found a community through this state that was just wonderful to me and, just gracious. And that's the community that I held on to. Because you can't get to these things by yourself. I don't care what you think. So it was good to have that community.
How was the news today, Wake Up with TaylaAndre, Unorthodox Conversations Leading to Universal Consciousness, has been in existence for the last 10 years. And it started because I was seeing things on international news that I wasn't seeing nationally. And I started going down rabbit holes and understanding that the national news is controlled by a handful of, like literally 6 individuals. And so I started seeking information about my country from the views of outside of my country. And it was mind-boggling. And still to this day, what we place on importance and what other countries place importance on. And so I'm wondering, in the beginning, in all of your years of journalism and reporting, how was it for you to see what's going on in world and in community and to only focus on these stories that you're being told to focus on? And with you being, now I might be assuming, but with you being the strong, assertive woman that you are, you know, no one's going to tell Liz no. You might tell me not right now, but you're not about to tell me no. Like, how was it when you had like stories that you felt were really important and they were like, well, we can't do that right now?
Well, you know, there was one story in particular that fits your description, and that was the story I wanted to do in South Sudan. I had never done international stories in local television stations, but this story has been presented to me by some people from Boston who were working in humanitarian work in South Sudan. I don't know if your audience knows much about it, but South Sudan, which is now 2 countries, Sudan and South Sudan, was one country, the largest country in Africa, and a country that has been at war against itself for decades. And there, as part of this war, there was slavery, and this is in 2000, 2001, 2002, and then it's going on. Modern day slavery, people were taking other people in forced labor, and so some Bostonians have been involved in that. And I wanted to cover that story because they had invited me to go with them to Sudan, and of course my director said no because it's a international story, we don't cover those stories. So that was my example of your point. But this time I went on my own. I just decided, you know what? I think I'm going to do this. Now, would I have done that 20 years earlier? Maybe not. This was in 2000. My first trip to Sudan was 2001. And we ended up, Gloria White-Cannon and I ended up starting a women's group, building a girls' school. The situation in South Sudan, as world now knows, just stunningly horrible. Conflicts are raging, people are being killed. I mean, we're hearing about that now more and more. People are hurting, they're marginalized, oppressed, poverty is out of control, there's corruption. Look at Haiti. And here we have a situation where people are risking their lives to get out of Haiti because the situation there is really bad. So we can ignore that, which, we've done a good job of trying to ignore that. So America, I have to say, has done better than other countries. Or we can get at least the right, and I think that's coming up now in Haiti, that people are speaking up and really putting this administration out on Front Street where it should be put, because this is a crisis, a humanitarian crisis, and this administration should be doing more than they're doing. Mm-hmm. But back in the day, that was Sudan. So you find that, yes, the world is going on in a totally different situation than sometimes we know. And you have to speak up. You have to speak truth to power. You have to make sure that people are aware of it. I mean, right now, the world is in a crisis with this COVID pandemic, and people are trying to figure out, what they believe and what they don't believe. But I would have thought this would have brought the world together. And isn't it interesting that maybe on some level the world's coming together, but it seems that we're more polarized than ever, at least in this country. So we've got a long way to go on that. And the media is not necessarily giving us all the information that we need.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. For those that are just now tuning in, this is Reverend Liz Walker at History, her story in the making, living history. This is a real selfish question. I am not, no bias, covering policies, politics throughout the years You've seen Joe Biden when he was Senator Biden, and now he's President Biden. Based on what you've seen of the years, how he's voted, how him and his wife have invested their money and their time, I'm trying to be politically correct here. What is your oversight or your view of President Biden? I'm not going to be politically correct. We know that he was for the super predators. He was talking about, we got to lock them up. We got to be tough on crime. We got to be tough on drugs. Like all of these things that he was so adamant about. And he played a role. Again, you said trauma. As we know now, trauma has residual. And unless it's a healed trauma, you could carry it for the rest of your life. And there are families upon families that suffered due to Joe Biden and his advocacy for being tough on our communities. But now, as president, he hasn't per se said, you know, I was 100% wrong. I shouldn't have done that. These are the things in which I'm doing in order to change the past. Just through your experience of watching this ebb and flow, I would just, whatever your opinion is.
Well, I gotta admit, I like Joe Biden, so let's be real clear, because I don't see a whole bunch of alternatives. Now, until we do, Joe Biden's all right. I want him to stay there. I want him to remain healthy. But right, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's been growth, changes, or maybe a reckoning. And everybody needs to kind of confess to sin. Everybody. And you confess and then you repent, right? You say, you know what, I made a mistake, that was horrible. And I didn't know that Joe hasn't said that, but I guess he hasn't. So I think people can grow and change. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
I am worried about the Katie situation. I am not sure that history is not repeating itself in the way these people are being treated. I will wait and see and withhold my judgment. Mm-hmm. But again, I'm not a political. I don't do the political thing, so I will let you have that thing. I think what has to change is deeper than policy. I think we're in a mess because we got to change the inside out, and that's a tougher change. So Joe Biden's not going to change the world. He's not going to improve the world. That's going to be done on a more intimate level, on a personal level. It's going to be done with heart and spirit. And we're not there. We're not there as humanity. I'm not even going to break it down into political things. Yeah. I mean, just humanity is something's wrong. Something's way off right now. And, you know, we're looking at the remnants. We're looking at the consequences of something that's wrong and off.
Mm-hmm. What is your stance on the censorship and or fact checking the post? So social media right now, I'll give my own example. So I posted on Monday, like many of us, about what's happening at the border with our Haitian brother and sisters. And in the post, it says that the man on horseback was whipping Haitian refugees. And I was censored in the sense of you don't have enough context here. He wasn't using a whip. He was using the reins of the horse. And it was odd to me because I was just like, it'd be one thing if I was just like, he was using a whip to whip them like slaves, but that's not what it said. And it's just censorship. How do you feel about the social media censorship? Not sure if you know, but it's coming out that Mark Zuckerberg sat down with President Trump and was like, listen, I won't censor your conservative brothers and sisters as long as you let XYZ slide as far as guidelines are concerned. We know those conversations were had. We know algorithms. I can't even see my mom. Like I have to go search for my mom and dad. The algorithms don't let you connect with the people you connect with on a regular basis. Like as far as the whole censorship of social media, I would love to know your personal opinion on that, or if you have one. It looks like maybe you don't.
Again, this is way beyond. Remember, I'm old school. I was absolutely, and I'm not trying to, get out of it, but social media was begun, I thought, again, naive, to bring communities together, and it has done a lot of damage. I'm writing a book, and I'm told that I have to get on social media to sell the book. That's going to be a hard shift for me, because I want to communicate with you absolutely as directly as I can. So I'm not the one. I think it's awful to have any censorship. I think you have to allow people the freedom of speech. That's what makes this a democracy. A lot of responsibility comes with that. And we have seen how horrible that can get. The misinformation that we have about us, the disinformation about the vaccines and all of the lies and all of the, the great lie that this man that the election was stolen. That's a lie. That's a lie that's been proven by legal systems over and over and over again, all the way up to the Supreme Court. But, you say what you want to say. So it's a tough one for me, Tayla. I think you have to keep fighting it. And I think you're right, that you should have the right to have freedom of speech. But I think we all have to know there's a great responsibility with that. And we are out of control with that already. So I'm going to sit back and watch how y'all figure that one out.
We're here with Liz Walker. If you have any questions, 617. We're here live with Liz Walker. If you have any questions, give us a call. We're going to go ahead and take a really quick break and pay these bills. 617-272-3387. I know my daddy actually is watching as well. And he was just like, is that Liz? I grew up watching her. And I'm just like, Daddy, you dating you, me, and her. Don't do that. But we're going to come right back. Any questions, we're going to move into the spiritual half of the show, because I want to talk about all that she is doing in community when it comes to the healing and when it comes to the leadership of guiding the sheep to, I was about to say something that didn't sound right in my head, but I've watched some of your sermons now that we are currently virtual, and I am inspired and I am moved. And more importantly, I love the way how you incorporate everyone, regardless of denomination. You stand firm in whom it is and what it is that you believe in, but you're also bringing in the welcoming and the love of everyone else without the structure of this is what you like. If you're going to be with me, this is how you have to be. And that, I would have to say, is the one thing that I most appreciate about how you pastor. And so I could go on soapbox after soapbox, but let's go ahead and pay these bills. I am TaylaAndre, SparkFM, Waking Up with TaylaAndre, Monday through Friday, 11 to 1 p.m.
At 617-272-3387.
Finally Home is a must-read, step-by-step guide that will equip any first-time home buyer with the knowledge they need to confidently make informed decisions. This book provides answers in simple and clear terms to most, if not all, of the questions you may have about credit, home ownership, and generational wealth. Finally Home equips the reader with the confidence to be engaged with the home buying process without feeling vulnerable or exploited. TaylaMade Real Estate Easy is not just a catchy hashtag, it is real estate agent and radio personality TaylaAndre's goal. A goal to simplify one of the most challenging processes you will go through as an adult. A goal to educate you properly on credit and teach you the strategies to finding the home of your dream. It is not just a good book or an easy read, it is the secret to a seamless home buying experience.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans, and soon they will be available to everyone.
This vaccine means hope. It will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
want to go back to work and I want to be able to move around.
To visit with Michelle's mom, to hug her and see her on her birthday.
What I'm really looking forward to is going to opening day in Texas Ranger Stadium with a full stadium.
We've lost enough people and we've suffered enough damage.
In order to get rid of this pandemic, it's important for our fellow citizens to get vaccinated.
I'm getting vaccinated because we want this pandemic to end as soon as possible.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
So roll up your sleeve and do your part.
This is our shot.
Now it's up to you.
You are now listening to SparkFM.
Good rising, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. I am TaylaAndre. Waking up with TaylaAndre has absolutely nothing to do with the time of day we link up, but about waking up your third eye with unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. We are talking with her story, living history, Liz Walker. Personally, I've said it before, I will say it again. I remember being woken up by my grandmother, having Liz Walker on the television, telling us what we are about to do, what the day's gonna be, her friendly disposition, her beautiful smile. She was a Black woman that I got to see in the daytime. And if I saw her at nighttime, I knew I was in trouble because I was supposed to be in bed. Okay, so I am really excited for today because it's been a dream of mine to meet you in person. And this is probably as close as we're gonna get for a little while, but it is a pleasure to have you here with us today. We talked a little bit about the past and how she has viewed media through her lens throughout the years. And so Mike actually asked one of my next questions as far as what story did you cover that really stuck with you? Or what was, and that's a two-part. I'd like to know a few, like what story was a story that just infuriated you. I think Sudan played a huge role in your life because it kind of took you on a completely different trajectory. But what other story locally and just like touched your heartstrings or pulled at your heartstrings? What story infuriated you and what story will never leave you?
You know, I wish I had thought about that, and there were so many stories. One of the last stories that I covered, actually, the last story I saw as I left television news was 9/11. I started divinity school at Harvard September 11th, 2001. So I was walking across from Soldiers Field Road. I decided to leave my car at the TV station and walk to school over to the campus of Harvard to go to school, and the towers had fallen, and I walked out. So that was obviously the story. I mean, you may not remember it, but that was a changing moment for the world and for this country, and probably was one of the most incredible stories I've ever covered here. I was trying to think. There are many stories in the city that were devastating to me. One in particular, I'm having trouble remembering the name of it. Charlie Austin was one of our reporters in WBC, and he did this story on a young man who was wrongly accused of a crime. And Charlie stayed with the story for many. I had to look it up because I can't think of the guy's name. But in the end, this gentleman was released because he was wrongly accused. How many stories are there like that? How many stories are there about young Black men who are in prison who didn't do the crime? So those are the kinds of stories. Probably the story that I will never forget was not in Boston, it was in San Francisco. And it was Jim Jones in Jonestown. Jim Jones was the preacher of a church that became a cult. He took thousands of poor Black people who lived in San Francisco to Guyana to build this kind of a retreat place. It turned in, he went mad, and more than 900 people killed themselves and their babies following him. And I covered that story when I was in San Francisco, and months later went to Jonestown. That story will never, go away because of what religion can do at its worst. What people who only are looking for a better way of life ended up in this nightmare and ended up killing themselves. So I won't forget that story. The Boston stories, I wasn't out on the street as much as I was behind the anchor desk. So I can't remember the Charlie Austin story, and I feel awful. But I think the 9/11 and I think the Jim Jones story. Of course, the Katrina story, now this was not a Boston story, but many of the people who were homeless after the hurricane struck New Orleans came to Boston. And I remember being there when they got here. Now, I was a preacher then. I had left television news for most of my career then, but that was another story that will remain with me. So again, sorry about that. Sorry I can't think of any. There were so many stories in Boston, but I can't think of many. I went to China with the mayor of Boston. So most of the things that got my attention were things outside of the city. If that's a fair answer, that I feel like I should have researched that. My memory is kind of shot.
No worries. No worries. We understand. We get it. We gonna charge your mind and not your heart. Let's talk about the spiritual side of Liz and how you went from mainstream media to I'm gonna go across the street and educate myself on divinity. Like, how did that happen? How did God come down and touch you and bring you down that path?
Well, Tayla, I think that's probably my story that's the most amazing to me. Now, first of all, let me tell you, I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. My father was a priest. So perhaps this was all predestined and I just didn't know. Because I was a heathen and had to be so. That got my attention until I came to Boston and Sudan. But the people I went with were pretty amazing people. And Pastor Ray and Pastor Gloria White Hammond were pediatricians. They became ministers and founded a church. My husband and I joined that church with my children. When I was divorced, I stayed in the church because I was just intrigued with them. They went to Sudan, I followed them. I was a reporter doing the story. But that was the time when Reverend Pastor Gloria told me that I would be called into ministry. I didn't see it that way. I just thought it was a good story. But we were just so taken and so blown away by what we saw in Sudan. And perhaps the reason I can't think of other local stories is that one moment in my life kind of overshadowed everything. People who had lived through war, people who had had limbs blown away and had seen husbands being macheted to death and had babies thrown live and well. I mean, we live in this country and we see one life, but I gotta tell you, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that is absolutely horrendous. So all of that was a part of my response, because I'd never been in that situation. And I was blown away by that, but more blown away that Gloria and Ray Hammond and some others thought they could do something about that. Not politically, not economically, but out of the spirit. Not missionary work. This was not about taking the Bible and that. It was about responding to people's needs. And so that, I think, was how I made that transition. It was just something so, there's some horrible things happening in the world, but there are some genuine people who are working on it. And they're doing it quietly, and they're doing it in their own way. And that's what this group was doing. So the building of a girls' school in the middle of the bush was one way to respond. And I'm preaching on a sermon coming up, and it's how love wins. And we always say, well, love wins in the end. Well, how does it win? It wins when people are willing to take risks, like the Hammonds, to do something. And that you can go all the way to Sudan, or you can go right across the street in your neighborhood and reach out. And now is that time. Do I sound like I'm preaching because I jumped in?
No, ma'am, but you absolutely can.
that's not but my point is, it was the notion that there was something more to do than simply report on the news, that I had to step across some boundary and follow these people for doing these amazing things. That's how I became a pastor or a minister. And I never looked back. And now we're working in Roxbury with the trauma work that we're doing, and it's even more exciting to try to fulfill a need that is so big right now, not just in Roxbury, but around the country.
Mm-hmm. And so I would be amiss if I let you continue without bringing up the fact that she said I was a heathen and happy to be one. So to all the heathen out there that are happy to be one, just know that a pastor said that she was once a heathen happy to be one, and
never would have thought. Who would have thought? So, you talk to a lot of people in religion and they'll tell you about they were, religious as children. Oh no, that was not my story. I hated the church. I hated to go to church because my daddy was a preacher. So I would never have thought that I would have ended up doing this, which I would tell you how God has a sense of humor. That's how I look at it. And I'm not looking back. But I was a happy heathen. I love my life. I rebelled against everything. But you know what, Tayla, that helps me now in reaching some young people, because I've been there in many ways as a young person. So I see how that can be used to help others.
Yes, absolutely. Let's talk about you helping others now and what the mission, well, not missionary, but the work that you're doing in and around the city with the trauma work. Please, help us understand what it is that you do and how it is that we can be of assistance.
Thank you for the opportunity to tell you about it. So in 2000, I got to this church, Roxbury, in 2011. That's when I first started preaching there. I had worked with Reverend Gloria, Dr. Gloria, in Sudan, back and forth for 11 years. Started in 11 years. And came back to Boston and was asked by the minister of this church if I would fill in the pulpit for him for a few months, not thinking I'd take over the job, because he was good to the church. But I fell in love with Roxbury Presbyterian Church, if you don't know, it's right on Warren Street. It's kind of the hub it's halfway between I can of that community, and we're right across from the Save-A-Lot.
Popeyes, y'all. She's across the street from Popeyes. That old Gothic church building that looks scary is absolutely beautiful on the inside.
But what I noticed in that neighborhood was a lot of hurt people. People walking up and down the street, just looking dazed, and some. Of course, we have substance abuse issues. We have alcohol issues. A lot of pain behind all of that in our neighborhood. One of our church members, his name was Cory, was murdered the year of 2010, before I got there. That was a particularly violent summer in Roxbury. There were scores of murders. There's a lot of gang violence going on with some of the housing developments in that area. And Cory was got down one night, pleasant night. He was on his way to a friend's house. They never found out who did it, and they never made any arrests, and his family never had any sense of closure, which is the case for most people who are survivors of homicide. And there's some amazing groups working with them, but we wanted to help this family heal. How do you heal from something like that? Especially as church people, we thought we could do something. But what we found out was that prayer, that funeral, that one-time laying of hands, that healing service is not enough. That people are walking around, the walking dead in our community, who have been traumatized by violence, by addiction, by abuse, by racism, by historical and generational events that are extreme, that affect their lives. And so we decided as a church community to work with clinicians so that the spiritual and the clinical would come together and give people a space to at least talk about some of their pain. So the Cory Johnson program came up with a program called Can We Talk? We put a sign outside the church, and it just said, if you are going through anything and you want to talk about it, it's safe. We're not going to preach to you. We're not going to take up offering. This is just a safe space where you can share your pain. And that was in 2014 that we started the program, and people have come every opportunity. It's been amazing. It is not a religious service. It is open to anybody, no matter who you are or where you're from or how you identify. And we sit and listen. We also offer you a mental health clinician who will work with you one-on-one if you need that. And if you need more, we can sometimes offer you resources from area hospitals and community centers. So it's a soft entry into mental health support. We have to admit that we need, and not just our community, but the world. We are in a mental health crisis right now because of COVID, because of the social justice issues that have come up through the last couple of years, and so that's what we're working to help. We are not a therapeutic center, but we are a supplement, and we are saying that the church can play a role in helping people talk about their issues. And in talking, you can begin to heal. Because when you don't talk, that's when that stuff just festers and festers and festers and can explode. So I am so appreciative of you, Tayla, for giving me this platform to talk about it. Can We Talk is on Zoom right now. You can find out about it by going to the Roxbury Presbyterian Church website, roxburypresbyterianchurch.org website, and we give you the dates and the times and the links. And you don't need anything. Come on and speak or listen. And that's how we build community around pain, and people stay and healing happens.
And so what we're pulling up now is the website for Roxbury Presbyterian Church. The sanctuary is open. The hybrid service will take place September 12th and 26th at 11 a.m. Instructions below for those that are Zooming. And this is the website. If you or anyone you know needs to talk, there's the prayer line Monday evenings at 7 p.m., the call-in number or a meeting ID. They do prayer and Bible study every Wednesday, prayer at 6 p.m., Bible study at 6:30. And here we go right here in the purple TaylaAndre colors. Can we talk? Are you feeling anxious or overwhelmed, especially as we deal with coronavirus, or perhaps numbness and other symptoms of traumatic loss completely overshadowing any other current issue? No matter what you are feeling right now, those at the Cory Johnson program remain committed to offering support and connections. And that is on Zoom every Thursday from 6:30 to 7:30. And you can join by phone as well. And so RPC is a vibrant community of faith. As Christians, we are committed to bring people to Jesus Christ, including them in the membership of his family, disciple to them. English is my second, sometimes third language. And introducing them to a Christ-like maturity, equip them with their ministry in the church and with their mission to improve God's world as they magnify God's name. And so again, this is the church, the RPC, the sanctuary is back open. When you walk in there, I don't have words for the way that it makes you feel, in the sense of like you get chills. That's the only way that I can explain it. Like when you walk in there, it feels like you can feel the presence of God. You know how they talk about the Holy Spirit? That's what happens when you walk in that church. And it is such a beautiful church, and it is so much love. Sometimes when you walk into church as heathens, because, I'm a happy heathen right now. When you walk into church as heathens, you kind of feel a little judged. But I can tell you, anytime I walked into church, it was open arms. It was love. The support is definitely there, and there is no judgment, as the only person who can truly judge you is the man above. And so we have come all the way to the top of the hour. Liz Walker, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your leadership. I don't think you understand how many lives you have truly touched, directly and indirectly. I have vicariously lived through you for many a years. And I am who I am because watching you. And so I want to thank you for touching my life in ways in which words do not have. But I truly am here today because of you. So thank you.
What you're doing. Take it to the next level. Thank you.
You're welcome. And can you please tell us, I don't know if this is like breaking news, but you said you're writing a book. And so can we get what does that look like and how do we support?
Well, the working title is How We Heal, and I'm going to tell you about the trauma work. I'm going to introduce you to some of the people. To tell you a little bit of my story because I'm healing too. And I'm going to talk about how we need to be vulnerable. So the book is still, I'm working on it right now. When I get off the phone, I'm going to go back and sit down and write. Hopefully it'll be out in a few months. And I'm going to be, doing more trauma work. We're replicating our program all over the Commonwealth right now so that it can be in neighborhoods so people have a place to go and talk and not have to worry about, having to pay for it or having someone looking over their shoulder or somebody judging them. And we're trying to tell people this is what love looks like. So this is what we're doing, girl. But you are amazing. So you take this on to the next level, and I'm very proud of you.
Thank you. So shameless plug, Miss Walker. I too wrote a book. It's called Finally Home, the step-by-step guide for people preparing for first-time home ownership. And if you need or any of your parishioners need any assistance with purchasing or selling a home or fixing their credit, please remember me. Also, I know you're a journalist, so you have this under wraps, but let me tell you, my friend Otter is a talk to text, and you just talk and it transcribes for you.
Really? And you're published. I'm trying to get published. You already said what I'm trying to do. So you go, girl. That's all I can say.
Hugs, and I can't wait to see you in person so I can give you an actual hug.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tayla. This has been fun. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I am TaylaAndre. Today felt so good. She don't know she's my mentor, but I'm gonna just adopt her, and I'm gonna have Liz Walker in my corner at some point. I don't know how, but we're gonna work it out. I know she's no longer in media, but I am open, willing to anything that she wants to guide us with. Maybe we can pull her back into media for a little bit. I appreciated all of your times today. I know it was Freaky Friday. I know how y'all feel about Freaky Friday, but this was Flashback Friday, taking it back. I love the fact that Daddy's on here. He's just like, yo, like Liz, like my daddy's a groupie right now. Daddy, stop being a groupie. Happy birthday to our founder, a Black woman, Danielle Hot Sauce Johnson. As you guys know, the media is not friendly to people who look like us, let alone to women who look like us. So she said, you know what? I'm done with this. You guys aren't going to keep marginalizing me. I'm going to create my own lane and my own path. And last night aired the premiere of Founding in Color, where Danielle Hot Sauce Johnson was in the spotlight telling her story about how SparkFM started and where she plans on taking us. And so that is, I loved it. If you did not watch it, you can absolutely rewatch because we went ahead and Zoom recorded it. And that's why you guys see the happy birthday in the background. Today is her birthday. So make sure you hit her Cash App or at least go to her Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter and wish her a happy birthday. You do not know how hard that woman works to make sure that you guys have the news, the music, and the community that is representative of who we truly are as Black, Latino, West Indian Americans living here in Boston. Shout out to all of our international listeners. Everything TaylaAndre, TaylaAndre. Make sure you hit up the RPC Church if there's anything that you want to discuss or talk about. If you need steps to mental health, can we talk? Again, the website is RoxburyPresbyterianChurch.org. And I promise you, if you don't know how to spell, baby, just go to Roxbury and put in a P and it'll pop right up for you. But it is a vibrant community. Love does rule. They give, and the Social Impact Center is here for all of us if you're in need. If not, you can refer a friend or a family member there. I thank Liz. I thank you all. I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. And mwah! I keep forgetting to shut y'all off sometimes. I'm sorry.